Northwest of the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado, is the high, mountaintop roof of America. It is a seemingly barren and deserted land located above timberline on the upper reaches of the mountains. This is the Alpine Tundra. But is it really barren and deserted? To study the tundra, we set up camp at a lower elevation so the delicate ecological balance of the tundra will not be disturbed by our presence. On the climb from our camp to the tundra, we take time to enjoy the beautiful scenery, especially the wildflowers. Nearby is a small stream fed by the melting snows of the higher elevations. As we travel upstream, we find a dam built by a family of beavers. By damming the small stream, the beavers have created a rather large pond. They've built their lodge at the edge of the pond. Such ponds often become excellent trout habitat. We returned to the same pond the following summer to again examine the environmental habitat of the beaver. To our amazement, we found that the dam was broken. The pond was drained. The trout of the previous season were no longer present. The willows, cut by the beaver colony, were beginning again to blanket the marsh. The melting of the heavy snow layer in the tundra of the past winter had created damaging spring floods which destroyed the dam. Last year's lodge is still in place, but now it is deserted. This cannot be considered as a disaster to the beaver, because, just like people caught in a flooding river, the beaver will repair their homes. By restoring their community, the environment will be similar to what it was before the flooding. Climbing upward, we pass through mountain meadows covered with a riot of color. We take time to closely examine some of the more colorful flowers, such as the monk's hood, and the elephant's head. Almost hidden under a tree is the beautiful Colorado state flower, the Columbine. The Columbine was selected as the state flower because it contains blue, representing the clear mountain sky, white, representing the mountain snow, and yellow, representing the gold found in them thar Rockies. As we continue upward, we see a deer lying on a rocky ledge. It is necessary to be very observant to see wildlife because it tends to blend with its environment. Even higher, we pause to enjoy the beautiful view of the valley and marvel at Mother Nature's handiwork. Further on, we pause at the Continental Divide, where the waters separate to flow either east or west. The vegetation is still lush here. The trees are straight and well formed, and the flowers are everywhere. As we continue our journey towards the tundra, the trees become smaller and smaller. The giant pines, firs, and hemlocks give way to elfin forests. The dwarf trees of the elfin forest, which is also known as the Crumb Holes, soon in turn give way to the tiny plants of the tundra. The Alpine Tundra is the land above the trees. In this terrain, survival is extremely difficult for both plants and animals. In the Colorado Rockies, the tundra is found at elevations above 11,000 feet. In the zone between the giant trees and the open expanse of the true tundra, trees become dwarf or elfin in size. They are gnarled and misshapen by the prevailing winds. This area is known as the Crumb Holes. Crumb Holes is a German word meaning crooked wood. The wind blows incessantly in the Crumb Holes. On a typical summer day, the wind velocity is between 15 and 30 miles per hour. The other three seasons often produce winds from 50 to 70 miles per hour. These continuous, strong winds cause the trees of the Crumb Holes to be misshapen. If the trees are unprotected, the limbs on the windward side may be sheared off. Can you determine the direction of the wind by observing its effect on these trees? On trees that have some protection, the tender young shoots on the windward side are damaged and stunted in growth, but not sheared off. Even though these branches may be dead, they help sustain life by protecting the new growth of branches on the leeward side. Looking across the Crumb Holes, we see what appears to be small islands of trees. On closer inspection, we find that many of these are actually only one tree. The incessantly strong winds in this region have caused the trunk of this tree to grow along the contour of the ground. At a distance, each one of these branches appears to be an individual tree, but in reality, they are all part of the same tree. A close examination of another tree gives us the same result. The trunk of this tree is parallel to the ground. The limbs extend upward, giving it the appearance of several individual trees. What appears to be individual trees is actually limbs reaching skyward from the trunk. From a distance, the tree islands appear to be small clumps of trees. Because of the harsh environment, the growth rate of plants here in the Crumb Holes is extremely slow. Knowing the growth characteristics of evergreen trees, we can determine the approximate age of these dwarf trees. Each year, pine trees grow a vertical shoot at the top of the tree. This shoot varies in length from an inch to 2 feet or more. The following year, a whorl of branches springs forth from the top of this shoot. Because of apical dominance, a new vertical shoot is formed. The approximate age of pine trees can thus be determined by counting the number of whorls a tree contains. Here is an illustration of this method. This represents the growth of this tree during 10 years. Using the same method, let's determine the growth of this small tree. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This represents 10 years' growth of this tree. The total age of this small conifer is about 20 years. Animal life flourishes. Chipmunks use their charm to freeload from the visitors to their world. timid but hungry Clark's nutcracker enjoys a tasty snack as well. After his snack, he preens his beak. Wild animals shouldn't be fed. It interferes with the development of their natural ability to survive. Moving on up the mountain, the Crumb Holes gives way to a vast, treeless area. This is the true tundra. Emerging from the Crumb Holes, one is overwhelmed by the vastness and openness of the wind-swept tundra. At this elevation, there is about 25% more light than in the valley. This extra light energy may cause a headache for those with unprotected eyes. The rarefied air makes breathing difficult and may cause one to feel lightheaded. This lack of oxygen makes any exercise, even walking, very difficult until the body adjusts to the new environment. A combination of the intense light and the lack of oxygen may produce nausea. Anyone with heart or respiratory problems should not visit this area without consulting a physician. Everyone should avoid vigorous exercise unless they are in excellent physical condition. This is the land of the Alpine Tundra. This is the harsh, treeless, windswept Alpine Tundra. Tundra is a word which describes a land with no trees. The ecosystem of a tundra is complex and very delicate. The tundra begins at the point where the trees give up the battle against the cold, incessant wind and the short growing season. In order to survive on the tundra, both plants and animals must adapt to the harsh alpine environment. For every 1,000 feet of elevation increase, the average air temperature drops about 3.5 degrees. An average overnight temperature of 40 degrees in Denver, Colorado means the temperature on the tundra would be well below freezing. Cold is not the only environmental challenge faced by alpine plants and animals. Winds blowing 3 times as fast as in the forest 5,000 feet lower creates a dry, cold alpine desert. The lush grasses of the low meadows is now replaced by hardy sedges, mosses, and lichens. Two animals that are easily seen on the talus slopes of the tundra are the fat marmot and the hurrying haymaker or pika. The marmot must store his winter food supply as body fat, while the pika or haymaker stores his as hay in his underground burrow. Marmots, relatives of the woodchucks and groundhogs, adapt to long winters by hibernating. During the short summer, the marmots become fat by feasting on the luxuriant growth of grasses and dwarf willows and relaxing in the sun. In winter, they retreat to their burrows in the talus slopes, where they will spend the next 6 months surviving solely on body fats. Marmots turn down their physiological thermostats to conserve energy. Their internal body temperature drops below 40 degrees and remains there throughout the long hibernation period. The metabolic rate at this low temperature is so slow that very little fat is needed to survive. Marmots share their habitat with the pikas. The pika is a small relative of the rabbits and the hares. The pika has many common names. He is known as the haymaker, the rock hare, and the coney. The coney is actually a small European hare. Pikas are active all winter since they do not hibernate. 3 special adaptations enable the pika to survive the harsh conditions of the alpine winter. First, the pika stores food consisting of dried grasses in his burrow. This dried vegetation of hay becomes the food during the winter. A single pika may store as much as 15 pounds of hay. Therefore, he is often called the haymaker. Second, he remains relatively warm due to the insulation of the snow covering his burrow in winter. 2 or more feet of snow maintains a relatively warm temperature of 32 degrees, which may be 60 or 70 degrees warmer than the air temperature above the snow layer. Third, pikas may stretch their food supply by eating their own excretia or droppings, thus digesting that which was missed the first time. Plants, the prime source of energy for animals, must be present on the tundra for the marmot, pika, and other animals to survive. The plants living on the Colorado tundra also survive and reproduce on other alpine tundras, such as the Alps, Alaska, Lapland, and other cold regions of the world. Plant photosynthesis powers all natural systems. One reason tundra plants survive is because they are capable of carrying on photosynthesis at temperatures far below those of other plants. Alpine buttercups are capable of photosynthesis and growth at temperatures as low as 21 degrees. Alpine buttercups and glacier lilies can begin growth and may even bloom under the snow. Most alpine plants are perennial. Some plants, such as the Alpine Sunflower, live 3 or 4 years. They bloom once, then die. The amount of energy required by a plant to produce a blossom and seed is so great that the plant may die after completion of the life cycle. One individual plant is of little importance to the ecology of a system. The survival of the species is uppermost. Only one annual, a tiny buckwheat, less than 1 1/2 inches tall, grows in the alpine tundra regions of the Colorado Rockies. This little buckwheat has specific demands of its habitat. It will not grow if the temperature exceeds 7 degrees Celsius. It needs continuously running water and very little snow cover. The melting snow furnishes this water. The pink cast on the snow is living algae. In exposed areas where the soil is not being held in place by plant life, the windswept areas are rocky. If this area is an assemblage of angular rock fragments, it is called a felsenmeer. Fel is a word meaning rocks, and mere means sea. Therefore, a felsenmeer is a sea of rocks. It is found on gentle mountain slopes above timberline. These rocks are constantly being cracked and lifted by freezing and thawing action. Therefore, they are jagged, sharp, and usually tilted. Notice the skyline formed by the tilted rocks. Most rocks in the alpine country seem to set at odd angles due to this constant upheaval caused by the freezing and thawing that takes place in alpine regions. The only plants that are found in the felsenmeer are the lichens, mosses, sedges, and other very hardy plants. They can adhere to jagged rocks and survive with a minimum of moisture and soil. These are the harshest conditions found in the tundra. Tundra areas that are 35 to 50% bare rock with cushion plants growing between them are called fel fields. This is an example of a typical fel field. Let's compare this to a felsenmeer. Here is another example of an alpine fel field. Fel is a Gaelic word for stone. Therefore, a fel field is simply a stone field with rocky ground and dry soil. Fel fields often have less than 1/2 of their area covered with plants. Most of these plants are cushion plants. Cushion plants can withstand the wind and will, at the same time, retain warmth and moisture due to their intermeshed stems and leaves. Up to 80% of an alpine plant grows underground. The leaves and stems above ground are very small. Cushion plants, like the moss campions, grow in a compact mass less than 1 inch high and have pubescent or hairy leaves. These adaptations, large root systems, hairy leaves, and compact low growth, offer wind protection, reduce water loss, and warm the microclimate that surrounds each cushion. Even though much snow falls on the tundra, most of it is swept away by the constant winds, and therefore the fell fields are colder and drier than snow-covered areas because they do not have the protection of a snow blanket during the cold winter months. The animals most visible in the rocky tundra are the marmots, pika, and the chipmunks. Deer and elk sometimes wander across the tundra, but are more often seen at lower elevations. As we look across the tundra, we see what appears to be freshly dug dirt. On closer inspection, we find that this dirt is actually the remains of gopher activity which occurred during the winter months. Since gophers live almost entirely underground, they are seldom seen by man. In winter, the gophers create a complex system of burrows under the snow. When the snow melts, the soil used by the gopher to create the tunnels collapses and forms intricate mounds on the tundra. These mounds, called eskers, are composed of soil. They're not hollow. During the summer months, the gopher lives underground. It feeds on grasses, roots, nuts, and dry vegetation. This rodent gets its name from a French word which means honeycomb. A 12-inch gopher can dig in a single day a tunnel that is the length of a football field. Most of the tundra in the Rocky Mountains is composed of alpine meadows. The flowers blooming in these meadows during July and early August provide a lush and colorful foreground for the distant mountain peaks flecked with melting snow glistening in the summer sun. Most of the plants in the alpine meadows are grasses and sedges. These plants have narrow leaves and stems which enables them to withstand the constant wind. Their root systems are matted. This matting prevents the erosion of the soil by the cold, powerful winter winds when the plant above ground dies. This matted root system also holds moisture, which is in limited supply most of the year. To further study the ecology of the tundra, let's take a look at some of the plants and the struggles they undergo to survive. The most showy plant on the Colorado tundra is the Alpine Sunflower, commonly called Old Man of the Mountain. The beautiful yellow flowers always face the rising sun in the east. The sunflowers can be used as a natural compass. They make a better compass than mosses growing on trees. Like many tundra plants, the sunflower produces only leaves the first few years of its life. During these years, it accumulates and stores food in the root system. At the end of each growing season, the plant appears to die. However, each spring it bursts forth to grow new leaves and store more energy. Finally, on a warm summer day, it bursts into bloom. Sapped of its stored energy required to produce this glorious display, the whole plant soon dies, leaving only seed for the next generation. The Alpine Sunflower is an excellent example of nature's way to ensure the continuation of a particular species. A very large amount of energy is needed to grow the blossom and to develop a seed. Therefore, the plant simply stores energy year after year until enough has accumulated to produce viable seed in a very short growing season. The Old Man of the Mountain, along with two other beautiful plants, the western yellow paintbrush and the small yellow alpine primrose, are endemic to the Rockies. That is to say, they are found only in this range of mountains. These plants are nearly extinct because of the limited range in the Rockies and man's intrusion into their environment. Some other flowers that add beauty to the tundra are the American bistart and the rose crown. On closer inspection, we see lots of insect activity which aids in plant fertilization. As expected, the yellow stonecrop is found among the rocks. The Alpine Bluebells add splashes of color throughout the tundra. They have tiny pink buds, which later become very delicate blue flowers. The tiny, never to be forgotten forget-me-nots always attract a lot of attention on the tundra. The penny is much larger than the delicate blossom of the forget-me-not. The moss campions, which add color to the fell fields, are in full bloom. The moss campion is an excellent example of a cushion plant. This one is not yet fully in bloom. We find the purple fringe nestled against a protecting rock. It has fern-like leaves that are covered with silky hairs to help protect it from the harsh environment. Its blossoms have long, yellow, pollen-tipped stamen that aid in its reproduction. Except for the fact that they are very short, all of these plants are very similar to the same plants found at lower elevations. They are often referred to as dwarfed. In spite of their small size, their blossoms and seeds are full size. The snow buttercup has a special niche in the flowers of the tundra. It is one of the few plants that bloom all summer. Frequently, the snow buttercup can't seem to wait until the snow is melted. The heat given off by its own respiration often melts a hole through the snow, which allows it to emerge in full bloom. Snow buttercups under deep snowdrifts have been found with half-open blooms. The snow buttercup blossoms form tiny water basins. This basin catches rainwater. This water floats insect-deposited pollen to the stigma, thus helping fertilization. This is another example of how nature provides the means to ensure survival of a species. Since the rate of growth is so slow and the growing season is so short, the damage done to plants by man stomping through the tundra may take nature 100 years or more to repair. The trail used by the Ute Indian women and children as they crossed the mountains over 100 years ago is still visible today. The Rocky Mountain tundra is a beautiful place to visit. During the short summer season, the flowers abound. Their perfume permeates the very air you breathe. It can be easily detected on a relatively calm day. The beautiful flowers and scenery you have just observed on your TV screen can be seen during a leisurely trip through Colorado's Rocky Mountain National Park. Nearly all the scenes, flowers, and animals were filmed during July and August along the upper reaches of Trail Ridge Road. I hope you will have an opportunity to visit this beautiful alpine tundra. The tundra needs to be treated with tender, loving care so future generations can enjoy its beauty, solitude, and grandeur.